So it's been about 2 years since I started building this twin Otter cockpit, and I still spend more time tinkering with it than I do flying it, and that's going to continue. I'm going to make some changes to the cockpit, and most significantly, I don't know if you can see behind me on the screen, I've got some instruments up, 2D instruments, and I'm going to add gauges to my cockpit. It's time for that. These are gauges made specifically for the twin Otter using Air Manager. I didn't make these gauges, I'm just testing them out for the guy who did, and we're aiming for a full set of gauges, or well, perhaps not quite a full set, but a comprehensive set to give most of what you need to fly the aircraft. We've got the basic 6-pack and extra to date. We've got the nav instruments. Most significant omission at the moment is we don't have any engine instruments, so at the moment they're displayed in a very unrealistic manner. You know, you can't really fly with it like this. They're obscuring the virtual cockpit at the moment, but I just wanted to put them up on the screen so you can get a look. So of course, to introduce 2D gauges in a realistic manner to the cockpit, I'm going to need some extra screens, and that's going to take some pretty big re-engineering of the cockpit. I've got two Dell 20-inch, in fact 19.5-inch monitors, widescreen monitors on the way. Those are the smallest widescreen monitors I could buy. One of them is going to be for the main panel. It's going to go right here, slap bang in the middle of my existing cockpit. So I'm going to have to get rid of this. We'll say more about that in a minute. And we're going to put another screen, you can't really see it from here, but down the left hand side, mostly for the engine instruments. So that's the first big change. This is going to have to go, this panel. I could relocate this, but the fact is I don't need the fire panel at all. I do need the autopilot panel, and I do kind of like the speakers, which I use for the comms and the volume control here. So I'm going to have to rebuild that. The screen's going to go here. The autopilot panel could go here. So a little bit of rejigging. I've got to probably build something new for that. So look out for that coming up, well, this summer. I'm not going to put any timescales on it, but I have committed to buying the monitors, so you know, I've got something of an investment in this. The next major change is the throttle quadrants. These throttle quadrants look the part, but they're useless. They're made by Cytec and they're worn out. You know, I don't fly very much in this thing at all, and even so, these throttles and the prop controls, they're just too glitchy by half now. Now, you know, I could buy some new Cytec quadrants and just swap them out. That would be kind of, you know, I suppose cost effective-ish. Although these are in short supply at the moment, I'm not really sure why. But the other thing is, you know, they're just going to wear out again. These are just cheap crap, basically. So I'm looking for alternatives. Now, there aren't too many alternatives around. And particularly if I want to mount the quadrants where they are at the moment, overhead, to give me more of a kind of realistic twin Otter layout. I haven't been able to find any realistic alternatives. One possible exception is the GoFlight TQ6. That can be mounted upside down, but honestly that's kind of an expensive, 300 odd pounds, and it doesn't seem very good. You know, the reports that I've seen about that quadrant are that it's a step up from the Cytecs, but it's not that much of a step up. The levers are very flimsy. I've heard that if you mount them upside down and you put any weight on them, the levers pull out, which is not very good. The other thing is that quadrant looks like it supports reverse thrust. It has some nice little reverse thrust levers, and I'm using quotation marks for the word levers. Those are actually just switches. You know, the reverse thrust isn't supported properly. It's supported in much the same way as it is on the Cytec quadrant. You know, with these two detents at the bottom, they just act as buttons. Same with the GoFlight TQ6 quadrant. So I'm not going to buy one of those. That's the bottom line. All the other options that I've seen for throttle quadrants are really intended to be mounted in a conventional sense down here. So that puts me in another pickle, really. And what I'm thinking about at the moment is I'm going to bite the bullet and probably go for a new quadrant and commit to just having to re-engineer things over here to move the quads down here. That means this panel's gonna, with the GPS and the radios and the comms panel, that's gonna have to go. I'm hoping to relocate it rather than to have to rebuild anything. So that comes, and let's imagine for now that comes out. Now the quadrants I'm looking at the moment are from Virtual Fly. Now that's the outfit that markets the Yoko yoke you've probably heard of. They're just about to release, this is April 2016, they're just about to release two throttle quadrants. There's a TQ3 and a TQ6, rather confusingly the same name as the Go Fly quadrant. But the TQ3 has 3 levers. It's kind of just like, it looks very much like one of the Cytec quadrants, but it's built to professional standards. And the TQ6 is the same thing, but it's a 6-lever quadrant. So if I get that quadrant, it's going to be mounted here, which means taking this panel out. Now that's also going to involve moving everything below that level this way a bit, for reasons which may not be obvious, but I know what I'm thinking in my mind here. And then we'll probably have space above the quads to have perhaps a half a sized panel with something on. I don't know what will be on there yet. That really depends on what I do with this GPS and comms panel. It's possible that the Cytec radio, which is going to have to move, it can move over here and be at the top side of that panel. Of course, when I remove these quadrants from here, that gives me a whole extra area up here at the top right for mounting something. Now I'm hoping that this GPS comms panel can somehow mount up here without any modifications to the panel. But you can see it's all very fluid and it's all just thought experiments at the moment. Really I won't know until I can rip some of this out and move these things around and actually try them there. It's going to make, you know, I'm still stuck with this kind of narrow vertical field of view with my virtual cockpit, but once we've got a 2D panel we get much more effective use of the out of the window view. Even if I stick with the virtual cockpit, I'm going to do perhaps something with the track IR profile. Of course the main difference is I'm no longer going to need to be panning up and down just to see the instruments in the virtual cockpit. And just one final thing to say about the implications of mounting a screen here are that the yoke's going to have to come forwards a bit, and so my seating position is going to be slightly further back as well. That's going to be fairly easy to do. This yoke, this is the Iris Dynamics yoke, which you'll have seen in my other videos. It has about a 3-inch extension even when the yoke is in the fully forward position. So that's going to be enough hopefully for the screen, if you imagine the screen mounted here, to be mounted kind of quite low, almost to the point where it's touching the shaft. Hopefully it's that 3 inches is going to be enough depth for it to sit down in there. So it's 30 centimeters high, and the reality is it's going to intrude somewhat into the viewing area, but if I can mount it almost down to the yoke shaft, that's not going to be too much intrusion. So there it is, you know, that's just a heads up on some changes I'm going to be thinking about pretty soon. And you know, depending on how radical that gets, this cockpit could change quite a lot visually. But I'm hoping at the end of the day it's going to be much better to fly. And I've got to say these instruments are fantastic quality. I was planning, as many people do, when I finally have the screen mounted with the instruments on, I was planning to put some sort of cutout panel over it, you know, made of MDF or something like that. But it's a shame to lose some of the bezels and things that are designed into these gauges. They've been so nicely done. So we'll see, you know, everything's up for grabs. So there you go, that's just some crazy ideas in the offing. More as it happens.